Hey, I'm Brad, and this is the B-Rad podcast. Thanks for being here. I've created this so that we can experience the awe, wonder, and curiosity of being human. For many years, I carried the sense that something was wrong with me. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't fit all the pieces together. My faith tradition promised acceptance from the divine, but I often felt this separation. He's over there, and I'm over here. So I decided to leave the path and the tradition. But what if leaving the path actually is the tradition? What if there's more going on here than what I was led to believe? Now, I know that separation is just an illusion. There's nothing wrong with me, and there's nothing wrong with you. We've simply forgotten who it is that we are. It's time for us to wake up to this divine reality, having eyes to see what has been true the whole time. It's from this heart space that I meet you here. I invite you to step off the familiar path, where together we can be radical in our becoming. Welcome. So I am sitting in my house, in my basement, and we just recently finished a room. That used to be kitchen, and now it's my studio and office space. And when we bought this house, which was recently, there was a piano. And I'm sitting in front of this piano, and it happened to be in the other room. And it was painted black. It didn't sound all that great. And I thought, oh yeah, this is great. We'll keep this piano, and they can use it and play it. And then I thought, well, what if I take it from that room, and now that we got this room finished, I'm going to pull it into my studio. And what if I tune it? Oh, that'd be awesome. I could tune it, and I can maybe like play it, and then maybe that just sounds obvious, or whatever, to what you're listening to here. But as a musician, I've been playing piano all my life, and I'm just kind of teasing you a little bit here, but I've been playing piano my life, but I've never actually owned a real acoustic piano my whole adult life. Every house that I've ever lived in, I've had a digital piano that I've used for recording and playing and performing and teaching. But now I've actually got a real piano. I've taken the lid off, and I can see all the notes in front of me. It's an upright piano. And so I'm really excited to do this. This is actually brilliant. I'm just like a little kid here at the candy shop, although I don't like candy, so maybe that analogy doesn't work. In either case, I just want to give you a context of where I am. Today, I am geeking out because I got a couple really cool things I want to share with you. And there are two things. One is musical, which is going to be the second half of it. And the first one has to do with meditation again. And I recently did a couple episodes with the Crazy Rich Asians talking about that movie scene and Can't Help But Falling in Love. I talked about that. Recently, I went to this amazing event with my wife to Cancun, Mexico, and it was headed by Joe Dispenza. And he comes from the northwest area of the USA, and he's a phenomenal individual who has an amazing background in science, and particularly quantum science, and understanding what is happening in that realm and how that relates to the body, how that relates to our systems, physiological changes that happen because of something that is happening in quantum science and what they are observing in the quantum physics and scientific world. How does that relate to us as human beings? As a scientist, you can sit in this environment. I'm sure I'm not a scientist, so I'm just hypothesizing what this can look like, of observing atoms and molecules and making these theories. But what happens if we become the experiment? What if we step into that environment and we now are one of the observers of the quantum model? So I'm going to first of all talk about that experience a little bit and something that he taught about. So that's the first half of this episode. The second half is going to be back to this beautiful piano in front of me, which is really amazing. So we're going to get back to that a little bit, and I'll give you a taste of that. So just to give you a heads up for this episode. Okay, so let's start with Dr. Joe Dispenza. At this event, he talked about the energy centers in your body. And if you're familiar with chakras, that's what he's talking about. And in that system, which is an Indian background, I believe it's an Indian-based sort of understanding, is that there are specific centers in your body, and there are 7 of them, that occur within specific areas of the body that are related to glands and hormones and secretion of all those fluids. And each of those centers has a particular mind of its own, you could say. So typically when we hear the word mind, we think of our brain, and certainly there is a lot to be said for that. But the mind is not just brain activity. The mind is also connected to the whole body system, and there's a mindfulness that's happening all throughout this body that we live in. So I'm going to give you each of these centers, and that's the first place I'm going to start. So the number 1, the first energy center, I'm going to call it energy center. You could switch the word and call it a chakra, but for this case, I'm just going to call it energy center. And also, just to give you another preface, a lot of the things that I'm talking about here, I got from his book called Becoming Supernatural. So if you're interested in more about all of this stuff, if you want to geek out as much as I am, that's a great book to go to. Okay, so number 1, the first energy center is your sexual organs. It's the pelvic floor. It is the perineum. That's another word for it. It's that lower area of your body. And that is responsible for our very life. The very creative life force that brought sperm and egg together in collision, and it was coming together and now grew in the uterus of a woman. That energy center, that particular energy center is responsible for life itself. That's a pretty spectacular energy center. So regardless of what has happened in our sexual world and the places that it has gone, it in and of itself is beautiful. It is vibrant, full of life, and we're here because of it. This energy center connects us. If you were to actually travel further down your body through your legs and into your feet, you can almost imagine yourself being connected into the earth itself, to the life force of the planet Earth, all the way to its core. Almost like a tree has a trunk and roots, and it's finding its way deep within the Earth's core. This energy center, which is connected to your sexual organs, that is coming out of you energetically and is connected to the Earth. That life force is a connection. So if you've ever been out in the woods, in fact, I was just on a hike this morning with my mom, walking this beautiful forest, and I'm looking around, and it's just gorgeous. It's a nice summer day. I'm connected to this. These trees remind me of the life force that they're connected to. They would not exist if there wasn't some root system that grounded them in the very life that they got. That's number 1. Number 2, the next energy center is just below your navel. And this is your digestive system, consumption, elimination. This is balancing blood sugar levels. And this is your pancreatic glands, right? This is where all of that is taking place. So whenever we shove food into our face and liquids, eventually it comes down into that area. And as you know, it takes a lot of energy to digest food. I forget the numbers, but it's like 30 to 40%, something like that, of our energy is used to actually pull apart food and to make use of it so that we can grab vitamins and minerals. So that's the physical part. The other part of it is that this is responsible for the social network that we are connected to. It gives us a sense of structure and security. We want to know that we belong. We want to know that we are loved and taken care of for. And this energy center allows us to feel that. And sometimes we don't feel that. We feel unstable and insecure, and it's going to have some sort of result, aftermath within our physical body in that center. So the 2 things to choose from here are either holding on to, right, consuming, holding on to, or letting go and eliminating, right, which is digestion in its basic essence. Like you take it in and it comes out. So you hold on to it, consume it, and then you let it go. And that is a cycle. If you continue to hold on to everything, no good, no bueno. If you let go of everything, no bueno either as far as bodily functions go. If you can't absorb any nutrients, some people have this problem, right? They are something happening in their body and they eat a bunch of stuff, but they cannot absorb. So that's a problem. So there's a nice, healthy balance. When this center is healthy, it is holding on to and it's letting go, and it's doing that in a smooth way. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the next one is number three, and this is the solar plexus. So traveling further up the body, now we're talking about this part just below your chest, okay? So where the diaphragm meets there, I'm just kind of finding it within my own body here. And this is connected to adrenaline and cortisol levels. The adrenal gland is found here, a very important gland in our body. This is connected to your will. This is your seat of power. It's what gives you determination, tenacity to go after something. You want to change something in your outside world, and you want to go lift that door, you want to go cook that meal. The solar plexus is a place by which you get in motion. It's very action oriented. It has an outward expression. You also, from this center, want to protect yourself and you want to protect your tribe. So whereas the second center is about security, keeping balance and harmony and safety, sleeping at night so no one will come in and rob you or a predator will come and eat you, of our ancestors, this center is about protecting, taking outward action, taking the initiative to preemptively secure and take care of those who you love. So this is a very action point to it. Number four, the fourth center, is your heart. It is behind your breastbone, and it also includes your lungs and your thymus gland. So this is your cardiac plexus is what it's called. And as you know, our heart and our lungs, powerful body systems, organs that keep us alive. So grateful that we have such powerful things inside of us that work even without us thinking about it. They're on autopilot, and the only time that we pay attention to them is when they don't work and we have a heart attack, something severe like that, or we're out of breath. But usually they're happening, right? They're here to keep us alive. Just beautiful, beautiful organs. Now the thymus gland, if you don't know this, is responsible for immune support, for growth, repair, and regeneration. So that's a pretty important gland, and I didn't even know that before doing this research. So this thymus gland that's found in this heart cardiac plexus cavity is responsible for that. And of course, we know the heart is this point of love, of gratitude, of appreciation, love and feeling grateful, feeling whole and complete. This is a fairly common place in our body where we will feel. And if we're talking to someone and we're talking about things of the heart, sometimes we'll even put our hands on our heart as a way of connecting with ourselves and even another person. So the heart, powerful. That's the fourth center. Okay, we're almost there. Stick with me. We've got a couple more to go. Number five is the throat. So now we're moving up further up the body, center of the throat. This is where your thyroid gland is. It's the tissues of your neck. And this is an area where we speak out, right? As I'm speaking into this microphone and publishing this podcast, and as you speak to other people and you communicate, we're all engaged in this. We are expressing our truth. We have felt something deeper in our body, and then it comes out through our lungs and our lungs, yes, comes out through our throat, and then we express it. It is language. It is sound. It is vibration coming through this particular area of our body. Number six, now we're in our head. Now this one is the back of the throat and the back of the head. If you can sort of imagine that for a second, there is a gland called the pineal gland, and it's about the size of a grain of rice, very, very small, and that sits basically between the back of your throat and the back of your head. This is a very important gland as it controls the levels of serotonin and melatonin in your body. Serotonin is what gets you up, gets you moving. Melatonin starts to cool things down, and you get drowsy, and they suppress us. This is also the circadian rhythms, the cycles that we go through of the sun rising, the sun setting, the wakefulness and getting tired. And in our society, we have all the fluorescent lights and lighting. Our circadian rhythms get out of whack. But generally, if we are in tune to these rhythms, this gland helps us be in flow. It helps us respect the rhythms of our Earth, of the very planet that we live on. This gland, the pineal gland, is also very, very interesting, as I have discovered recently. It is a doorway to higher dimensions that are beyond matter, beyond three-dimensional reality. And when we mechanically put pressure up on this gland, and there's ways to do this through breath and holding some of those lower centers, we start to create oscillation on the outside of this gland. And what that does is it starts to create this electromagnetic field around our body. And as we do that, that starts to get things moving that might have been stuck before. It becomes a liberation of energy within ourselves. And then as we do that, that communicates, it broadcasts a signal beyond our physical body into five-dimensional reality, which is the quantum world. And that's a whole other conversations. But I just want you to know that this pineal gland is very responsible, mechanically speaking and biologically speaking, as a gateway into those other places. It gives us very lucid dreams. So when we talk about inner world and outer world, it really helps us connect that stuff together. So when we talk about use your imagination and we sense things within our body, and then we also use our imagination to describe something that we haven't experienced before, this gland and the hormones around that, they really help with that. They help describe both an inner world and an outer world. Now, the next one, number 7, is the pituitary gland. You might have heard this one before. This is more in the center of your head. This one is the size of a pea. So that's about, is that smaller than a grain of rice? I'm not sure. That's roughly the same size, maybe a little smaller, more of a circumference, circular in shape. And the pituitary gland is called the master gland. It is super responsible for so much of the processes in our body. It's highly focused and it's highly receptive, meaning it's highly receivable. It'll gather information, particularly from the pineal gland, which is not too far in the back of the head. It'll receive that information, but it'll also send information and focus that information to places in the body where it's needed. As well, this gland connects us to our divinity. Right? We have our humanity, which is usually kind of the lower part of our centers and our sexual glands for sure, moving up. But the higher we go, and when we reach this 7th center, chakra or energy center, whatever you want to call it, it is a high level of consciousness that gives us the ability to understand, accept, and experience our divinity. Now, to give you an extra, there actually is an 8th center, which is not in your body. It's about 16 inches above your head. And it is connecting us to that unified field. So I was talking about 5-dimensional reality, talking about quantum model, which is beyond this physical world. That's this 16 inches above your head and further and beyond. Think Star Trek here. Think, places I've never, I can't even remember the slogan, but beyond, right? To infinity and beyond. I'm thinking of Toy Story. That's the only reference that I can think of. So it's like the cosmos. It's this eternity. It's heavens. It's the blackness, the void. It's as I'm talking here, my hands are above my head as if I'm reaching it or something. It's way out there. It's beyond you. That's what that is. And I'm sure astronauts probably had some pretty wild experiences being out in outer space. I can only imagine what that must be like. But that is the 8th center. Okay. So I've given you all 8 centers, and what I want to end on here is that I started with the first energy center, which is down in your sexual organs and in that pelvic floor. And as you move up, we eventually get to the pituitary gland. That was the 7th center. When energy that is in the lower centers starts to rise and it starts to make its way up. So first center, just imagine that area of your body. 2nd center is the navel. The 3rd center is your solar plexus. The 4th center is your heart. The 5th center is your throat. The 5th center is your throat. The 6th center is the back of your neck. The 7th center is now right in the middle of your head. As energy is moving from the lower centers to the higher centers, when it reaches your pituitary gland, there becomes a downward cascading effect where all of a sudden now information starts to flow from the pituitary gland, and it cascades all the way back down through all of those glands. So the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, thyroid, thymus, adrenal, pancreatic, and sexual glands, it creates like this circular motion. So I mentioned earlier the electromagnetic field, right? Kind of like coming up from the base all the way to your head, and then around your body, and then back down. Well, gland-wise, hormone-wise, there also is this circle that starts to form. And this is so connected to your spinal fluid. That's how those messages get sent through your automatic nervous system from the base of your spine. As you're moving up the base of your spine, those are all connected to the front part of your body. And as that fluid reaches up to the back of your neck and you start to broadcast a signal to your pituitary gland, that will cascade back down through your body. I just think it is fascinating. Regardless of what you might think about energy centers, chakras, voodoo language, new age, whatever you might call it, or whether you love this stuff, or whether you might as geek out as much as I am, I think it's absolutely fascinating that we have these particular organs and glands in our body that are all connected to each other, and it's all happening within us. I'm not talking about something that only squirrels experience, or only the mountain systems or the lakes or some alien out in outer space. No, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about me. I'm talking about my 14-year-old son. All of these things are happening. They are there. They are there for us to experience, not to be afraid of, but to explore. And the reason I'm sharing all of that with you is probably for that reason. One of the reasons, right, is be curious about it. If you want more information, you can look it up. But even if you just hear it from me, those are the energy centers in your body. All right, good. Now let's move on to the piano, which is in front of me. I'm just kind of making stuff up as I go here. But I'm not really going to play a song for you today, although maybe something later. But I want to make this bridge between the energy centers of the body and the piano. Okay, so the piano has all these notes, as you're well aware, right? The 88 notes, if you didn't know the amount. The very first note on the bottom is an A. So that's the first white note on the piano is an A. And as you move up, it goes up the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Those are all white notes that I'm playing. It starts back over at A again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And it keeps cycling. So there's only 7 notes of the alphabet, and then it keeps cycling. The first C on the piano, A, B, C, is here, and this repeats. Second C, third, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are actually 8 C's on the piano. And the reason why I say all that is because there is a phenomenon in the musical world called the Harmonic Series, or another word is overtone series. And what this is that when a note is played, and piano's a good example of this. It happens in other instruments too, but you really get the full spectrum in a piano. When a note is played, a series of other notes happens to take place as well. But you don't necessarily hear them unless you're paying attention, unless you open up your ears to hear other frequencies that are taking place because of that fundamental, that initial note that took place. So the very first note that we're going to start with, you can do this on various notes, but I'm going to do C. It's pretty easy. So I'm going to give you that second C on the piano. So just quick review. A is the first note on the piano. A, B, C. That C, I'm going to start with the second C. So if you are ever at a piano, an acoustic piano would be the best. I'm in front of an upright acoustic. Grand pianos are fantastic. You're not going to hear this in a digital piano, but I'm going to share this with you because I want you to experience this, both as a listener and even at some point if you want to sit down at the piano and do this yourself. So this C that I'm playing is the second C on the piano. Now this is the first note of the Harmonic Series, overtone series. The second note happens to be the next C, which is an octave higher, right? So first note, second note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to depress this second C. I'm actually not going to play it, just so that the string can vibrate freely. And I'm going to play that fundamental again. So my question now is, what do you hear? I'm going to play the fundamental again. Do you hear that note? So obviously you hear the note that I'm playing. And that higher note you actually can hear. So let me do it again. So I'm just going to play it so you don't hear it. Here's the first note. So you can actually hear that first note. I'm not even playing. I have my finger on the note, but just so that you can hear the notes vibrating. But I'm actually not playing the note. So there's the first and the second. Now the third note of the harmonic series is a G. And that's 5 steps up from the second one. So let's see if we can hear that one. So I'm going to depress the note. I'm going to hit that fundamental again, that first C. Can you hear that? So I'll try it again. I'm going to press that G. Here's the bottom note. The G. Really cool, right? Now I'm going to play you one more, because as they go up the piano, they become more faint. They're harder to hear. But for this purpose, I'm going to give you the next one. So the next one is another C. So now we got 3 C's. My notes, C is a bit sticky. And the G there. So this is going to be the 4th note of the harmonic series. So I'm going to sort of play this note and give you that fundamental again. That middle C, and that happens to be middle C on the piano. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, now I've played all 4 notes for you, but this series is that if I play just the one note, all those other 4 notes can be heard if you're listening. And I heard this way back when I was in Humber College studying jazz and commercial music. This was back in the 90s, late 90s. And I was blown away. There was this guy, his name was Efrain Toro. He was a percussionist, and he gave this lecture. It was probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours in the main auditorium. And I remember sitting there, my jaw must have just been on the floor, because he was talking about these harmonic overtone series. He was talking about our universe and how this relates to music. And it never left me. I have always been fascinated by this interesting relationship of vibration and frequency. He also talked about colors. Colors themselves are frequencies, and if you slow the vibration down and keep the ratio the same, color, like the color red, is the A on the piano. So when someone who has perfect pitch, and they're like, and they say, oh, that song? Is it a Beatles song? The Beatles song, Lady Madonna. They say, oh, that song is in the key of A major. The reason some people can actually see color when they hear a key of a song. And the reason why is because the frequency of the color red is the same ratio as the note A on the piano. Scientifically, it's interesting. Musically, it's interesting. And the fact that people who have perfect pitch, meaning they can identify specific tones, they see the color when they hear it. So it just seems to further verify that actually is how that is. I'm on a tangent here. Let me get back to what I was talking about. So I've got the first 4 notes of the harmonic series. There's a few more. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 is E. 6 is G, and the 7th is either an A or a B flat. Depends on how pianos are tuned. So for this conversation, we're just going to give them both. I'm not going to cheat you. I'm going to give you both of those notes. Kind of a bluesy sound, right? Kind of like a jazz sound. So those 2. And then the 8th one is C. And the 9th one is D, and it kind of keeps going up the scale, up the piano. Okay, so that is the harmonic series. And there's a fantastic TED Talk by Asaf Wiseman, and he said this statement. I wanted to share it with you. He said, in this series, there is embedded preordained series of notes, completely dictated by nature. So this harmonic series, it's embedded. It's preordained series of notes that are happening and are dictated by the very laws of nature. I didn't make this up. The Efrain Toro, the guy who came and taught at the school years ago, he didn't come up with some fanciful idea and say, "Hey, everyone, I I thought of this great idea and I want to share it with you. No, like this is naturally occurring. This is something that is for us to observe within nature. What I want to do is I want to layer together the first conversation about energy centers, and I want to layer that over top of this harmonic series. So again, you have these 8 centers, 7 centers plus the 8th one, which is above your head, so it's not part of your body. Energy centers of your body, and the harmonic series of music, and particularly the piano, what I'm talking about today. How do these connect? What's the point between these two things? So I have a few takeaways that I came up with, but before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to improvise a little bit. I'm going to play basically this sequence of notes, and I'm not going to veer from it. I'm going to give you that D as well, which is the 9th, for anyone who's counting. And I'm going to ask you to sit with not just the information that I gave you, but also just this idea of energy centers in your body, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let each of those notes represent energy and biology within your body. And it just so happens that we have a musical expression of that same series of energy and mindful positions within our body. So here we go. These notes that you just heard, I didn't pull any other notes other than the first 8 plus the 9th note, I love that D as well, of the harmonic series. And each of these notes has a frequency. Each one of these audible notes can be heard, can be felt, can have an emotional connection for us. They can be playful, light, dark, thought-provoking. As a piano player, it's hard to be confined. I want to play more notes around those, so it's actually a challenge to just stick to those ones. But there's something beautiful about that series. So here is 4 takeaways from this whole conversation. So number 1, all of the parts matter. All of them. All of the parts in your body, they matter. You might lose a toe and you live. You might lose your heart and you may not live. So some parts have a greater responsibility. Makes sense. But all the parts are there. They have purpose. They're there for our benefit. They're there for us to use, to pay attention to connect with. All of the parts of this series on the piano, they matter. They have a function. They're naturally occurring in nature, so they exist for a reason. They're there to be played. They're there to be heard. They're there to be shared with other people. They are there to be experienced, to be reorganized, to be looked at from different angles. So that's the first idea, is that all of the parts matter, especially within our body. And I don't know what your story is. I don't know what pains you carry, what wounds are real for you, but they are not to be discarded. Sometimes in the spiritual community, there is an idea like you have to ascend these things and you have to move beyond your past, or you need to rise above. And I get the language behind what they're saying, and sometimes maybe it comes from my lips too. But there is this idea of, if you're going to transcend, which I'm all for, and evolving and growing out of something into something different, all of those things that are connected to you, that may be painful, they come with you. They are included in your journey. So as you grow and you mature and you exercise your true self and you step into that divine space, they come with you. They're not removed, but they are included in the process. So all of the parts, all of the low frequencies, or if you go further down to the piano, all that low stuff, I mean, to my ears, man, I dig it. Like I love the lower frequencies on the piano. And in many ways that could be connected to our humanity, the lower centers of your body, your sexual organs, your digestive tract, your solar plexus that has the capacity to command matter, to assert itself. That has some depth to it. It's got this deep vibration that carries weight, and as much as we might want to ascend to these higher frequencies, which might be more our divinity part of us that is moving up our energy centers, all of it matters. All of the parts matter. We're not going to. I don't want to hear songs on the higher register of the piano all day long, or neither the low, neither the middle. Like, give it all to me. I want to hear the whole register. I want to hear the vast landscape that's available. Okay, number 2. Learning to hear sounds that are not immediately obvious. So meaning, like, when I play that first note of the series, this note, the second note of the series, it's not really obvious, right? Like, if I just play the first note, if I didn't tell you about this series, you just think that all you hear is that first note. But there is this other note happening too, and then there's this note, and as you go up that series. Now, sometimes there is a very obvious note in our life. It's loud. It's grabbing our attention. It's pain, it's crisis, it's joy, it's euphoria, it's something on the scale of emotion, and we can't help but hear it. And that's amazing. Pay attention to it, to all of it. But if you're kind of new to, like, particularly the energy centers of your body, or even to this harmonic series, some of these ones that are more subtle or nuanced, there's no guilt or shame in not hearing them or not knowing what there are, or just not even know what I'm talking about. That's fine. What about the notes that are loud to you, right? What are those notes and frequencies in your life? And pay attention to them. They're telling you something. The lived experiences of your life and my life, they ought to be heard. They deserve to be heard. It's very easy for me to go hear everyone else's frequencies, everyone else's loud notes that they're making in the world, and get all jazzed up about what they're doing and loving it or hating it or judging them or however I respond to them. But what about me? What are the frequencies that are emanating from my centers, from my life, from my sound, the music that I'm making in my life? Paying attention to that. And then as you start to pay attention to the most obvious ones, that's when you'll notice there's some other frequencies happening too. There's some other notes that you didn't hear initially, but they're also vibrating. Just like the series on the piano, they're going off because of some of those lower frequencies. Number 3, the next takeaway is that what happens inside of us happens all around us. What is happening within the physiological structures, the biology, the glands that are secreting hormones, the fluid that's coming from the base of your spine and going all the way up the back to your brain, blood systems, all of that stuff. And I don't know, I was gonna say half of it. I don't even know like an eighth of it or less, right? But I'm just spewing out what I do know. The biology of our body, all of that, and the energy and the things that are more mysterious to us, that is also happening outside of us. And this example of this series, the Harmonic Series, is a good example to say, hey, listen, what you experience within yourself, it's also happening outside of yourself. Right? You've heard the mirror concept of what you are experiencing. There is a mirror outside of you that's reflecting it back to you. Well, here's a mirror that I suggest to you is music. Is a single note. I'm not talking about Rachmaninoff's something the third. I'm talking about one note on the piano, right? One note is a reflection of a bunch of other notes, and it's reflecting back to you something that's happening inside of you, something that's happening inside of me. I love to make those connections. The last one is this, is that whenever someone learns how to play piano, specifically in the traditional context, they always start with this note. And that is middle C on the piano. And rightfully so, middle C is the 40th note on the 88 key bed of the piano, so it's roughly in the middle. So that seems to be a logical place. And middle C, it got that name. It's the 4th C on the piano, but it's also middle C. For any kids, especially who's starting to learn, if they position themselves right in front of the piano square, that's an easy note to start with because it's right in the middle. They don't have to move their hand too far. If they've got short limbs, then they can easily start with that note. Another reason why they start there is because in the key of C major, that's C major scale, it's all white notes. And there's no black notes to contend with, so it's very simple to start there. If you start with the key of A, like we were talking about earlier, the color red, if you remember. So A has 3 black notes. Those are all black notes. And that one, it's not harder, but it just requires a bit more focus and perhaps more skill. So C, middle of the piano, middle C, as well as all the white notes. Here's the really interesting part, is that middle C is, in this case, is the 4th series in the energy centers of your body. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That C is still a bit sticky. The piano tuner came and fixed it, sort of. So middle C. Do you remember what the 4th center is in our energy centers? It's the heart. It's the chest cavity. It's your lungs. It's that thymus gland inside of you. So just as a young, budding piano student, such as myself or many others, start with songs in middle C. That middle C, it's also our heart center. It's this chest cavity inside of us. And what is phenomenal to me, this is where I'll end, is that your heart is literally the bridge. Your heart sits right in the middle there. You've got 3 below you and 3 above you. It's this magical meeting place that all of us can connect to. we know what it feels like to experience our heart. As early as going to the doctor where they take a pulse and they'll put their fingers underneath our throat or on our wrists, and they're not putting on our heart, but they're finding our pulse. They're finding how fast is their heart beating. We want to know that. That's important to keep track of. This beautiful cavity, this beautiful organ, just to have gratitude for the organ itself. Think about how much work it does for us constantly. And we can abuse it, neglect it, forget about it, love it, be loved by it. And I have experienced some profound moments in the last few years of my life as I've sat in times of meditation, contemplation, prayer, silence, just relaxing even, and having my hands on my heart and just feeling that thing, feeling the actual organ. And now as I even dive deeper into this, like to feel the energy that is there, the mind of my heart that is receiving information, is connecting that information to other parts of my body, that is filling me with love and appreciation. And I can have my hand on my heart and my finger on a note. And I make this connection here because this is the center. This is the center of my being. And there is incredible power and possibility and potential that exists here, right in this center. So even if you never play a piano, even if you just put your hands on this area and you bless it, and you speak over it, and you let it love you, it will. And it will direct you. And it'll connect all of that which is human about you and all of that which is divine in this magical meeting place that is your heart. If you are wanting to go deeper into this, to learn more, to experience more, I want to make mention again of Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I'll share links on my show notes and on my website. If you go to his website, drjoedispenza.com, you'll find a great meditation on there called Blessing of the Energy Centers 1. There's 3 that on there. The first one is fantastic. You'll find it under the store tab and go to meditations. It's $13 for a download. It is brilliant. It is so, so good. I encourage you to check it out if you are curious. As well, the book, Becoming Supernatural, I was referring a lot to that, about the energy centers and just the scientific research that they're gathering and data on how all these centers are being affected by our attention that we put on them. All the music today was brought to you by my upright acoustic piano, played by myself. And thanks again for being here, everyone. We will talk to you next time. Bye.